Just waiting on the thing to pop up to say I'm live. Probably alright right now. There it is, there's the notification, we're live. So we're here, round 2 of ALR Tier 1. Currently only 17 drivers in the lobby. Who's missing? I couldn't tell you. First of all, I apologise for not being able to commentate last week. I'd been to the dentist and my whole mouth was like numb from where they'd numbed it, obviously. So it was, one of them things. I couldn't really talk properly. Probably wasn't an idea to commentate. So a big thank you to Reaper, who commentated in my place last week. I appreciate that. Watched some of the stream. He was doing a good job, so thank you to him for last week. But moving on to this week, as we ready up, so we are only going with 17 drivers. That is a shame. But Britain, first track I ever commentated here in ALR. I think it was round 4 of season 4. So yeah, good memories of this place. Definitely been a good race whenever we've been here. Britain, usually one of the better tracks in the calendar when it comes to producing action. It's a fairly nice track when it comes to being able to keep it side by side. DRS straights are nice. I mean, you can really keep close within that 1 second. It's one of them tracks you have to be quite careful about your ERS usage, because whilst you do save a fair amount per lap here, you also need it to stay competitive, especially if you're in like a train. If you run out of ERS and you're in the middle of a train, you could very easily lose positions or drop off the back of that train and find yourself in a bit of a bad situation. So yeah, it's definitely one of the more challenging tracks when it comes to the more technical aspects, such as managing ERS. Not so much managing fuel, but I guess if you under fuel, that could be an issue. Really your positioning, obviously very easy to get DRS trains around this track, and we all know being the third man or worse in a train kind of makes it impossible to do anything unless you've got a serious advantage over the guys ahead of you, like a tyre advantage or an ERS advantage. So yeah, definitely a lot to think about at this track especially, but really I think the winner will be the person who can combine good pace with the best management of their race. Strategy, undercut is powerful here, but it's not so powerful that it's your only option. If you really wanted to, it is possible to pull off a overcut, depending on how much ERS and tyre life you held on to ready for that in lap. So lots to think about at this track. We'll just have to watch and see who gets the better of this track. Going to start off here on board with URL Jonah here in the Haas. First man out on track, so hopefully he doesn't let anyone through. And we can ride on board with his first lap, take you through it very quickly and see what he's doing, where he can improve. And just a general how to drive this track, because of course everyone in this tier 1 is going to be fast. It's the top tier here in ALR, so they're not going to be slow. They're all going to roughly know what they're doing, so there should be a few good things to point out unless he makes any major mistakes. Just coming out of Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel, ready to come into the final sector of the lap. So we'll be able to start the lap soon. Not the longest lap in the world here, definitely not the shortest either. It's quite a nice balance in general, to be honest. Definitely probably top 5 tracks for most people in this game. I know there are a few weird people that disagree there, but I think for the majority of people, top 5 track, but let's see as he comes off the line. So 8th gear coming into turn 1, sort of completely flat, taking as much of the inside curve as you can, trying to have the smoothest run before braking at the end of the curve for turn 3. Taking the apex, short shift to 4th, now down into 1st, in double short shift, triple short shifts up into 4th here on the exit, and now he's going to come onto the DRS straight. DRS open, first DRS straight of this lap. One of the two. We're going to brake just after the 50 here as we're turning, braking and turning all the way down into 4th. Short shift to 5th here. We're taking a very tight line through the next corner. He's again down into 2nd, short shifting up into 5th. So he's short shifting a lot through this lap. Maybe a lot more than personally I would, but it's his choice to see what this lap going to do. Again, flat through cops. You don't take the right line there. Don't want to take too much grass. Don't want to take too much curb in there. There's always things to slow you down before trying to get a nice run into Maggots, Beckett and Chapel now. He downshifts to 7th and then to 5th for the second part, using a lot of the inside, using the curve and exit as well. He's trying to get some slipstream here from Chiquito, and it's been a very solid run so far as he comes up towards the final section. He's going to be, again, braking and turning down into 5th here. He's going to try and maximise the track width on exit before coming into the final complex where he's going to go 3rd, using as much curve as he could. He's actually second there. And is short shifting up into 5th on exit. Again, Percy probably reduced 4th. It's a 1:24.4 for the first lap in the session, and 1:24.6 for Daniel behind him, 24.5 for Ladamala, and a 24.0 here for Brett in the McLaren. So it was all very close, but Brett going about 4/10 quicker, 4.5 tenths quicker, and Rudy following him, only about 1.5 between those two guys. So seeing a little bit of a split already here between some of these guys. You know, we have Jonah, Ladamala, Goodwin and Raleigh all separated by 2/10 there, but then we have Red and Rudy about 2-3 tenths ahead of all of those guys. So very good showing there from the season 5 champion in the Williams. Should be a good track for him. I'm pretty sure last season he had a good race here, so not surprising to be honest to see him just coming off the finish line. It looks like one of the Ferraris, but I think, is it both of the Ferraris? It is both of the Ferraris. Holhouse going to cross the line first, and I have realised I've been saying his name this whole time because it's House, because he's Dutch, not Peace. He crosses the line to 24.5, puts in 5th place, and stalls he crosses the line behind him. I think he invalidated. Does look like he's invalidated though, so no time on the board yet for him, as we have very quick succession of times there. I think it was actually Chiquito going up into 3rd there with a 24.3, so about 1.5 quicker than Jonah even. So he's really starting to fill that gap between our front two and the rest of the field as it is at the moment. Good stuff from him so far. Just looking, we have Alu Palu on the lap, coming towards the end of this lap in fact, so let's just ride on board as we come to the final section here. Looking clean so far. Yeah, Alu Palu choosing a gear selection slightly closer to what I would do the final section there. I don't think he quite short shifted early enough though. Definitely lost a bit of time there, but not the amount that he's behind. 25.3, so that puts him how far outside the top 10? About 5/10 outside the top 10. So yeah, definitely more time to be found from him. I have Jim on an out lap, so we'll just ride forward with him for a bit, see what he manages to do. I should be seeing most people into the pits very soon. Really only get 3 runs in at this track. So yeah, we actually have Stel Repass, who is Moby Kick with his old gamer tag, or Moby Kick, however you said it. So he's in tier 1 this season, very good from him, but he's going to be out of sync in this qualifying session. Probably only going to get 2 solid runs in, I would imagine. Looking very tidy so far from Jim, as he goes purple in the first sector, so looking very nice, but might be a case of his setup is, well, he's got his setup, a bit more straight line speed. To be a bit better in that first sector. Maybe he'll struggle in this middle sector, but we'll have to see. Very, very clean there through Cops. So, definitely looking on the pace at the moment. Opens DRS across the sector, second split, and it is a purple middle sector. Yes, I know that middle sector is glitched, and it always shows you it's purple, so, you know. We're coming into the final section now. Let's just see how the last bit of his lap goes. Looking very, very strong here. Maybe on for pole. Not quite. P5. About half a second down on Bread there, so slots right in between Jonah and Ladamala from earlier. And he's the third driver to get to the 24.5s. Speaking of Jonah, he's just started a new lap. In fact, Ladamala has started one right behind him, so we'll be able to keep an eye on both of these drivers as they complete their second lap of the session. Yeah, so Jonah this time opting for a slightly different gear choice. Let's see how it affects his first sector. Slightly down, nearly a tenth down. Maybe had an issue coming into one of those corners. Didn't quite get to see it. Obviously this off-board cam isn't too useful, but actually he's let Ladamala through and he's abandoned his lap. His Dresser has now joined as the 18th driver in the session. Hopefully he can work out, take control of the car and get into the session and be able to complete a lap or two. He does have time to still complete 2 laps if he does it quickly, so hopefully for him he can get in that car quick enough. Speaking though, Ladamala was a purple middle sector, but he was 2 tenths up on his current time, so he's got another 3 tenths or so to find in this last sector if he wants to go for pole here. But not saying it's impossible, but probably quite difficult to do, as he didn't look like he made any mistakes in his previous last sector. P3 though, here finds an extra half a tenth, moves us up into P3 with a 24.2. Very nice there from Ladamala, who joined midway through season 4 and was very strong right out the gate, but kind of dropped off in season 5, maybe just not having as much time to practice or something, which is quite unfortunate for him, but he's always been a strong contender for points ever since the word going in this league, so very good from him. A 3,000th improvement there from Bread, so not a huge difference to his time, but it is an improvement, just slightly increasing his lead over Rudy here at the moment. Rudy, who looks like he's abandoning his middle lap, could be wrong, but he is on 0 VRS, so I don't think this is going to be a flying run. I'll stay on board anyway. He might decide, instead of pitting now, to go straight for another run on these tyres, so we will just stay on board for a minute. Actually, what we'll do, no, Rally's backed out too. Pole House is on a lap, so yeah, we'll watch him. Looking very solid at the moment. Very, very smooth with Cops there. You just see his inputs. It's just one movement in and one movement out. Very nice and smooth. There's none of this jabbing at the steering wheel, trying to get the rotation in. You know, none of this constantly trying to adjust steering angle. Very smooth. One movement in, one movement out, and that's gonna definitely be the fastest way to do it. Just that smooth input is going to help his tyre wear a lot in the race. But as he comes across the line, that's going to be a 24.166. So he misses out on second place there by about 0.03 of a second. But is good enough for P3, about a tenth quicker than Ladamala. Tal Piers slots into P4, just ahead of Ladamala, just behind Pole House as well. Starting to look very close here, all the way through the top 10 really. Even the top 11, 12. only covered by about 6-7 tenths of a second, so very, very close here compared to what you'd normally see. So everyone's still with one more run left in the session to see what goes on. It looks like Powerhouse, yeah, he's on his in lap, but I'm just looking to see if he's going to get in anyone's way. Yeah, look, I think what he's doing is he's going to give slipstream to Scorsy here. Could be wrong though. Scorsy also not on a lap, so it's not going to be blocking. But Powerhouse won't be blocking Scorsy, fortunately. But I was thinking maybe Scorsy would be going slowly to stay behind his teammate to get that bit of slipstream to start his lap, but maybe not. Yeah, Powerhouse does pit, so oh, so does Scorsy, that's okay. So no slipstreaming here for Ferrari. ALR though coming towards the end of his lap, currently the slowest valid time of the session down in P16. It's like Dresser has got into the car and is on track, currently coming to the end of the first sector, but here's his teammate ALR who sets a 124.5. So it's the fourth driver with 124.5 this session, puts him P9. So very solid effort from ALR there. Another driver who's come up from a lower tier. So Stel Repass has actually now set a valid time that's put him P9 with a 24.4, exactly 100th quicker than Jonah, but Jonah has now improved to a 24.1, third driver in the 24.1s, and it is getting very close here between the top guys. Chiquito also with that 24.0, only the second driver to get into that 24.0. I'll be going to see a sub 24 time in this session. I think if anyone's going to do it, it would be Bread, as he's been 24.0 on both of his runs so far. But with how small that improvement was in his middle run, maybe he's hit his limit straight away in this session and could be under pressure from either Chiquito, Rudy, Jonah, Polehouse, Tao Piz, maybe Ladamala, maybe Rally. So really top 8 here, covered by 3 tenths. That's crazy, you know, like so close here. I mean the top 14 covered by 7 tenths now. And Dresser hasn't even set a time. Let's see what Dresser's doing. Oh, a big mistake there from Dresser. As we go on board, it's not looking too clean so far through the first sector. We'll have to see. He's actually backed out. He's on 0 ERS, so he's probably going to have to get back to the pits quickly and try and squeeze in a run at the end on some fresh tyres, but it'll be a bit touch and go whether he can make it. First driver to go out for their final run now, Polehouse. So he will be the first driver to complete the final run, you'd imagine. Now what I think might happen here is that Scorsy might pull out of the pits conveniently as Polehouse is coming through that final section of the track, allowing some slipstreaming down that first DRS straight, but we'll have to wait and see. It's getting towards the point, 2 minutes now, we should start to see everyone coming out of their pit boxes. As you see, everyone coming out in and out lap now, so it's been really good timing there from Polehouse actually to avoid all that traffic. He hasn't got to deal with getting a space in front of him, making sure no one's catching behind him, because he's got all this clear track to himself. So actually interesting from Dresser, has decided to go for a flying lap in the same set of tyres he was on, so he didn't think he'd have time to pit, and he's probably right. That does mean he's going to have to deal with a lot of traffic from these cars that are not started a lap yet. So we'll ride on board with Polehouse for his final run of the session and just see what he gets up to. Very smooth. Oh, big lock up into turn 3 there, that's not going to help him at all. He chooses not to go into 4th and then chooses 3rd there. Looking decent except from that lock up there, so maybe he hasn't lost too much time. We'll have to see as the process goes split. He's actually up by 0.03 of a second, so even with that small lock up, well, it was a fairly big lock up, but even with the lock up he is still improving. Choosing 5th gear on exit, I just feel like 5th gear is too much bogging down. I don't know. Everyone seems to be doing it, so maybe I'm just wrong. Probably. I'll have to see now. I'm trying to think Mags and Beckett. This is probably one of the most crucial parts of the track to nail, and he's invalidated. He's cut it, so he will not improve in this session. The 24.166 will be his best lap time, and it's all up to these other guys now. It's looking to our current pole sitter, who's just come across the line, will ride on board with this final lap from the McLaren and see where the time is in the lap compared to the other guys we've seen so far. Very tight over to the left there in the start. Look how much corner he took there. Very committed. Only opting to go into third there. Very early on the power, using as much track as possible to really probably help them the power earlier. Again, on the 50, braking and turning all the way, using as much curve as possible, staying a lot tighter to this right-hander than other people, and it is purple. It's a bit of a distraction. This Ladder Mallow is stuck on the exit in the gravel there. Look how much, all the way up to that white line with the outside tyres there. Just a bit more committed all round by the looks of it. Even not using the inside curve, they're still having a nice run. Maybe scrubbing up a bit of speed, but it didn't look too serious. 7th gear, 5th gear, just like we've seen. Shortened to 6th though, so that's quite unique. And he's, look at that, 2/10 up coming through the middle sector. So coming into the final sector now, using that curve on entry. 6th gear, holding it in 6th gear, maximising the track width in the exit. Using all of that curve, he's using the curve on the entry here, using just up to the red curb. Again, 4th on apex that corner, and he's going to run to the line now. It's going to be a 23.6, a huge improvement by 3/10, and doesn't look like anyone's going to be able to beat that. Rudy and Jonah, so Jonah improved to a 24.162, just ahead of Polehouse. Tal Piz with a 23.7 there, so it's a McLaren 1-2 at the moment. Front row lockout. Let's see if Ladder Mallow, well, doesn't. I doubt Ladder Mallow will do anything. Rally pitted, and so yeah, that pretty much confirms it here. We have got a McLaren 1-2 for the second race here in Silverstone. Very solid stuff from the McLaren team. The only two drivers to go sub 24 in the session with the 23.6 and a 23.7. About a tenth, just over a tenth separating them. Like a tenth and 4,000. So it's super close between these two guys. And then you have third down to 15th covered by 7/10 of a second. Crazy close all rounds. So yeah, just waiting for the session to end. I think people are just getting wheeled back into their garages. Just Rally we're waiting on here in the racing point. And once he's in his garage, we'll transition over to the race and formation up and all that. Brett actually saying that on his outlap for that final run, he was spun by someone, so that's interesting. I wonder who he got involved with there. And if it was someone on a flying lap, that would be quite bad. But here we have pole for FRL Bread in the McLaren. His teammate Tal Piz in second place, just over a tenth behind. Chiquito making it a 2-3 for France here. 4/10 off the pace in third place, but I think everyone struggled on their final runs a bit, so that's quite unfortunate. Rudy, 4th place with Jonah and Polehouse behind, all covered by 0.03 of a second, making it Dutch 4.56. Ladder Mallow P7, just over half a second off the pace with Rally, Jonas and Jim rounding out the top 10. Starting on a free choice of tyres, we have Stel Repass, Alu Palu, Daniel, Harm, Sculzy, Smake, Joe and Dresser, who did not set a time in that session. So that's the starting grid for this British Grand Prix. Should be a good one, especially looking at how close everyone is at the moment. You know, you've got, and it's sunny, that's always a good thing. Not sure about the guy up there wearing his orange hoodie. That's doesn't really look like the weather for that. But yeah, you know, feel so tight together at a track where it's quite easy to stay close to the car in front. You know, you got all the DRS training. We should be on for a good race here with maybe some people all packed up tight, going for moves everywhere. Maybe some slightly more opportunistic moves. You know, they might be going for dangerous ones, especially later on in the race where they're trying to gain positions. But obviously, it's hard to do so with all the DRS and slipstreaming going on. So yeah, maybe potential for some incidents there. But definitely set up for a good race here in Silverstone as the lights come on for the formation lap. And I don't know if I've said this before, but I really love the formation lap, you know. So exciting, you know, so much stuff happens. As it looks like a Renault struggling to get off the grid there. It looks like Joe ended up behind Dresser for some reason. Very strange, and it is a one-stop strategy at this track. I'd be surprised if anyone goes soft-hard, if I'm being completely honest. Soft-medium is the obvious choice unless you get like a lap 1 incident. Then maybe the hards is the way to go, but I think even at that point, maybe medium-soft to the end would be a better strategy, because the hards here are not the best tyre, in all honesty. You just don't really want to be on them. But Bread having to watch his teammate behind, because it looks like Tao Piz trying to create a bit of a gap. Maybe hope for Bread's tyres to cool down on the start, get that better launch and get up into the lead of this race on turn 1. It's a good strategy. It does work. You know, cold tyres make poor starts, but I think Bread has noticed and is trying to avoid that happening. Actually, the field a lot more bunched up than you'd usually find them here, to be fair. You'd normally find like a huge gap somewhere in the midfield where someone's really taking that strategy to the extreme. But at the moment it looks pretty good, pretty fair. All guys staying relatively close together, no one trying anything too cheeky. I'll say that, and Rally did slow down quite a bit there in the racing point. So now we have the AI taking over from the lead cars, as they do just about when you come past the pit lane. The AI takes over to stop you from going into the pits and forms up the grid. So just waiting on these last few guys to cross that point. I think from now on everyone should be controlled by AI. Didn't look like there was too much bad behaviour there on the formation laps. That's good stuff. I mean, the first driver's already stopping on the grid, whereas the last guy is just coming through the final corner now. Looks like the Mercedes of... how do you even say that? Smake? I don't know. It's Mike? Honestly. But now looking towards the front, getting a good view of the lights for once in this game. It's not absolutely ruined me. 5 red lights, and we are away here in Silverstone. It's been a very solid start there from Tao Piz on the left side of your screen. It is not quite enough to challenge Bread though, and in fact it's allowed Chiquito to get alongside, carrying much more momentum around the outside, but Chiquito now under pressure from Rudy after getting squeezed out a bit. Again getting squeezed. He's not having a great couple of corners here, but does look like he's poked his nose just ahead of the Williamses. There's a bit more action down the back between Jim and Ali Palu. Ali Palu getting shown a bit wide there by the Mercedes driver. Coming back towards the front, we have the Hasser Jonah looking for a move on Rudy, but he's just gone up the inside and not really. I couldn't tell from the camera angle if he wasn't left space. He probably was. I think he's understeered into the side of Rudy there, and that's unfortunately put him on the back foot here on that one. He's down in last from what was a very solid position, 5th place. So very unfortunate for him, but from the angle it did kind of look like it was his own mistake. So I don't think you can really blame Rudy too much. Maybe the other camera angles would tell a different story, but who knows. Now we come looking how tight that field is still. I mean, we don't even have DRS or anything activated. Let's just switch on the telemetry, and that should tell us what kind of ERS usage everyone's got. Looks like the Red Bull of Chiquito and the Renault Ladamala being the main users here as we get the predicted pit stop strategy here. Everyone cares so much about as the game does its traditional leaderboard timing glitch that we all love. Rudy and Chiquito going at it. That's for 4th place, not 7th place, and Chiquito getting the inside for the next couple of corners. That should very wide there from Rudy. So maybe he'll feel he was forced off. Maybe Chiquito will feel he left enough room. But at the end of the day, Rudy's gone off the track and probably received a warning there, and stays behind the Red Bull Chiquito for the moment. So Chiquito holding on to P3 already, as Harm actually has been in the pit, so maybe he got damage there on that one that we didn't see. But Harm now all the way down in last place. Jonah already making up positions on Mike. That's what I'm going to call him, because I have no clue. Still repass already with 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings, and you can see Rudy there taking a much more aggressive line out of Chapel. He's got a much better run, but it looks like Chiquito's using a lot more errors. Chiquito already down to 20% ERS. That could really hurt him as we come on to the 3rd lap now, where DRS is enabled. He's still got Rudy solidly within his DRS window, and that means that if Rudy's going to be able to pull himself along, and Chiquito's going to have to use that ERS that he's already used most of. So maybe not a great idea to have used so much ERS in the opening laps here from Chiquito, especially since he's so far behind Tal Piz. He's not been able to keep inside of Tal Piz's DRS window, so he is really a sitting duck in the laps to come, especially now that we come onto this back straight. He's used a bit of ERS there to make sure that he's just safe from any kind of overtake, but he won't have that DRS for much longer if he keeps using it at the rate he is, and could really come back to bite him in a lap or two's time, unless he can do something about this cap to Rudy. But as I say, lap 3, it's already going to be near impossible to do anything about it. Talking about that gap, look how close Brett is to breaking that 1 second gap to his teammate Tal Piz already. And it's only lap 3. Tal Piz will have the DRS. Tal Piz also quite low on ERS, but Brett even more low on ERS. He's already down to 16%. Trying his hardest to get his teammate out of the DRS so that he can run his own race by the looks of it, but it's not quite working for him. Maybe in a minute when we get to a more technical part of the track, he can help extend that, as Jim there getting through on Jonas for P8. I'm pretty sure it is P8, I'm pretty sure the leaderboard's fixed itself. So P8 there for Jim, moving ahead of the Alfa Romeo. Look how close this field is still. I don't think there's anyone outside of a 1 second gap between 3rd and 16th. So just one big train at the moment. I would expect that train to break up a bit as we get towards the pit stops. There's actually Ali Pali already looking like it's dropping off the back of Jonas. So we'll probably see a few more smaller groups form as the race goes on, and they'll all be training in their own little group. Probably not likely that someone will get to the front of a group and storm away towards the next group without some kind of serious advantage, but it is what it is. It's the nature of this track. That's why it's important that you don't fight too hard in these opening laps, and you just try and keep the pace of the car ahead. You know, it's really the most important bit. If you're keeping the pace of the car that's ahead, you're not going to get dropped from their train, which will overall, if you put a good strategy on, keep some good pace, you know, manage your ERS and everything well, you will be able to gain an advantage out of this. Joe has had an incident coming through. Madison Beckett, he's dropped behind Dresser and Jonah, and Daniel Goodwin moving ahead of Ali Pali. So Ali Pali looking like he's struggling for a bit of pace early on in this race. In the medium tyres, maybe preferring the softs. Scholesy behind on the softs, so he's got to be wary of that. Daniel, who moved ahead of him, is on the medium, just like he is, so not much of a difference there. Rally now dropping off the back of Lada Mala, not quite able to keep that 1 second gap, and this is what I was saying, you start getting these groups of about 3, 4, 5 cars start to form, and from the rest of this race it's very unlikely that they're going to get too far ahead of that train. You know, there's probably going to be race-long fights between these guys, so Be interesting to keep an eye on, see who comes out on top in these individual smaller fights, and that's really how Silverstone races tend to go, without any kind of safety car or rain to spice things up. Speaking of Ladamala, he's actually very close on the back of Polhu, maybe looking like he's got a better pace in the opening stage of this race. Polhu of course out qualifying him, but Ladamala looking very strong here on race trim. So you'll see very definitely close enough to make a move work here, but of course Polhu also with the DRS ahead, and this is why you really hate being the third, fourth, fifth man in the train, because the car ahead of you has DRS, making it much harder for you to make any kind of move. It's actually Scusi falls behind Stel Reaper, so those soft tyres just not quite working for him as well as he would have hoped. Stel Reaper's also on soft, so using those tyres to much better effect as it stands. Just seeing the gaps here, actually Alu Palu at the head of this train, Daniel Goodwin kind of finding himself in no man's land. He's broken away from Alu Palu, but he's just not quite close enough to Jonas at the moment. Maybe that will change once the softs start to die off and the mediums start to come into their own. Dresser and Jonah going at it side by side through the first section of the lap. They're still side by side, both with DRS of course as they come down the main straight. Dresser on the softs, Jonah on the mediums, very tight between those two there, but Dresser losing out to Jonah with that close racing, but maybe another opportunity coming up. Obviously once they get through Magnus Beckett's chapel they come onto another DRS straight, but looking at how tight this group is, I doubt much will come of that, in all honesty. Someone who is still very close though is Jim, right on the tail of Rally, even as they exit the Magnus Beckett's chapel, and Rally of course does not have DRS and he's already derating. So he's used all of his ERS, does not have the DRS, and is now losing his position to Jim here in the Mercedes. So Mercedes overtaking the pink Mercedes there for P7 as Stel Repas gaining another position on Alu Palu, moves himself up into P11 and to the head of this train. So he's going to try and use those softs maybe to catch up to Daniel, but it's a big gap to close. He's 2 seconds behind, so he's got to close a whole second. He's got to do it quickly before those soft tyres start to die. Of course, the pit window opens around about lap 11, so I really doubt that those tyres will be better than the mediums for much longer. Maybe lap 9 will be their limit, as Scusi is already in the pits. So Scusi decided to go for an undercut onto the mediums here. He's going to try and run those mediums all the way to the end. Let's see if it works out for him. If he has good pace on these mediums, he can possibly gain a couple of positions once everyone else is coming to the pits, but it's a very risky move and he's the only one to go for it at the moment. We'll have to see how it pays out for him once everyone else comes to the pits. Still very close up here for the battle for the lead, half a tenth separating the two McLarens. So far though, it has been Brett able to keep in front of his teammate Tao Piz. Both drivers saving a bit of VRS, but Tao Piz saving a lot more, obviously with the assistance of DRS. When you have DRS you have to brake harder into the corners and you save more ERS as a result. So yeah, he's probably just quite happy at the moment to sit behind, save his ERS and see if he can catch Brett napping at some point with lower ERS. But he does actually seem like he might be running a bit less wing than his teammate Brett as well, because through the tight, slower section it looks like Brett has the advantage, so maybe indicating that Tao Piz will be saving a bit more ERS through having a lower wing, as well as Joe becomes the second driver to receive a 3-second time penalty for track limits here on lap 8. So he'll have to be quite careful of that. It's not like anyone's really close behind him, but it could come into effect should he get in front of some people towards the end of this race. If everyone else is able to keep it clean, it will be quite detrimental to him really. It's quite unfortunate that he's got that penalty so early on as well, because that means he's got the rest of his race to worry about track limits and not getting another penalty, because if you get 6 seconds here you're in big trouble, in all honesty. But what this is looking like is Brett's maybe protecting his tyres a bit, because Chiquito and Rudy and all that are starting to close up to Talpiz here. And even though Talpiz has more ERS than all of them, combined most likely, as Chiquito becoming the third man to get a 3-second time penalty, and him and Rudy dive into the pits here on lap 8. So going for an undercut here. Let's see which of the McLarens is going to be the first one to pit. You'd assume that being in front, Brett will have priority of strategy, but you never know. He might decide he can go a lap longer and lose out to Talpiz, who decides he wants to go for an undercut. I have a feeling that this lap it will be a case of do whatever he doesn't for Talpiz. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Obviously, you can see how tightly the pack was spread when the guys who pit from 3rd, 4th place, so 12th and 13th, and they're not even coming out the pits, they just came out the pits. So they come out the pits in 12th and 13th after being 3rd and 4th. It's just showing how tightly packed this field is here at the moment, and you can really see that Sculzy and guys like Mike have gained quite a bit out of this. In fact, I don't know if Mike's made a stop or if he's just that far behind, but I'd assume he has made a stop with that gap. I mean, coming out alongside Jim, he's now a second behind Jim, getting caught by Rally, but that's a solid amount of points that he's currently in position to take, but maybe doesn't have the pace to hold it for very long. Rally gaining quite a lot at the moment, and so Brett does pit, meaning that Talpiz has to stay out another lap as Polehouse gets 5 seconds for speeding in the pit lane. So huge mistake there from Polehouse, and he was running in such a good position too. So Talpiz now the driver who's going to have to go that extra lap. We'll have to keep an eye on where he comes out. We'll just also look at this battle between Daniel and Stel Repas, because these two staying very close in the moment, and this could be the decisive lap if Stel Repas decides he wants to go for a move before they go into the pits. Obviously Daniel in the Williams, so it's very unlikely that he's going to get held in the pits at all, as Brett comes out the pits in P8, having been the leader of this race, and Chiquito is only about a second behind him, so he's got to hope he can shake Chiquito very fast, and Talpiz is going to have to beg that his pace is good enough in this lap not to lose out to the Red Bull as well, because very easily that undercut from Chiquito could mean that this has gone from McLaren 1-2 to a McLaren 1-3. And if Chiquito can get within that DRS, he could even make it a 2-3 from McLaren and take the win all for himself, which would be a huge surprise, looking at the fact that he was quite under pressure from Rudy behind, and still is under pressure a bit from Rudy in the opening stages of this race. Now, is Stel Repas going to go for the move? He doesn't. Daniel on the medium, so he will go longer. Stel Repas does not pit, oddly enough. You would have thought he'd pit and then try and get an undercut on Daniel, but he's gone very long into this race, Stel Repas. You usually don't want to pit any later than lap 11. But he's decided to continue. You saw everyone else was pitting between the laps of lap 7 and 9 and all that, so it's quite confusing. And it's actually, what's more confusing is that Talpiz has stayed out, and I think the longer he stays out, the more he's going to cost himself to the guys trying the undercut, which is not the best strategy choice. I think he's relying too much on the game's given strategy and not thinking enough for himself here, if I'm being honest. He's seen everyone else go for the undercut and he just hasn't covered. Maybe thinking that if he goes long into this race that his softs will stay alive enough to maybe gain the time on Brett, but yeah, I don't know. Let's see, does he pit this lap? He does, so pitting 2 laps after his teammate and 3 laps after Chiquito, I'm pretty sure, so we'll have to see how this works out for him, but I can't imagine it going too well. Obviously the 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th are all the guys who started on the medium tyres, and there'll be a few laps still before they pit, so Daniel will take the lead of this race. And still Repass, still on those soft tyres, deciding to carry on. I'm not sure about that one really. It's going to be close actually as we come towards the pit exit now. Bread rounding the final corner, and it looks like Talpiz still not to the end of the pit lane. It's a very slow pit lane. He's definitely going to lose out to Bread here. He's going to lose out to Chiquito too. Is he going to lose out to Rudy and maybe Polehouse? It's going to be Rudy, and Polehouse is ahead. So look at that. Chiquito moves from a second place in this race to a net 5th, purely because of staying out that little bit longer, and he might get the benefit of the fresher tyres towards the end of this race, but I'm not sure. He's going to be in that DRS trend, as I was mentioning before. You know, the cars ahead of him are going to have DRS just in the same way that he's going to have DRS, and it's going to be quite risky of a choice to stay out that long. I can't see that the fresher tyres are going to be enough of a benefit to him to make the move. We'll have to see when we get to the end of the race though. It could be a way bigger advantage than we could possibly think, but yeah, we'll have to see how this one plays out. Right, now Talpiz with DRS. It is going to be close between Polehouse and Rudy. Rudy with no DRS. Polehouse fighting quite hard for someone with a 5-second time penalty though, and one that I don't think will get removed considering it's for speeding the pit lane. He does have the better pace right now, so he moves to the head of this train. He's 2 seconds behind Chiquito. Chiquito, who is able to stay inside of Bread's DRS by the looks of it. Delta's kind of inconsistent, but Chiquito of course does have that penalty. Bread does not, and that is the biggest advantage that our leader has in this race right now, on top of the fact he has about 10% more ERS than Chiquito behind as well. So managing this middle section of the race very well, and Chiquito does get the DRS here, but it's not really going to mean much. He'll gain about a 10th from the straight, and then he'll probably lose it again to the dirty air that's so strong on this game, which is quite annoying because you get dirty air from so far back that you have to be within 6/10 to get any kind of slipstream, which is completely backwards from how it should work and how it works in real life. You know, in real life you get slipstream from like 6 seconds back. It's a small amount of slipstream of course, but you get slipstream from like 6 seconds back. You get dirty air slightly less far back, but a similar amount, maybe 4 or 5 seconds back for dirty air. But yeah, it's just confusing really. Estelle Repass finally pits off those soft tyres. We'll have to see where he comes out. Can't imagine it would be the greatest position ever, if I'm being honest. As the lead is already passed, and that second group is going to pass, and that third group's probably also going to pass. Maybe even the fourth group of Scoolsy and Jonah who get past here. It'll be tight on pit exit for sure. Scoolsy's passed, and Jonah's through too, so that's 15th place for Stel Repass as he rejoins onto the track. So I don't know why he tried taking his tyre so long, but it's just not worked out for him at all. But we'll move back forwards towards this nice little trio that might become a quartet very soon, as Ladamala is within DRS range on Talpiz now. And yeah, Talpiz's choice to take those tyres longer really costing him here in the middle section of the race. You can see how close he's getting to Rudy, but it will be difficult to pass Rudy and then pass Polehouse, you know, and then get away from them. It's definitely possible as he runs into the back of Rudy there, and I'm going to be honest, I think that's a penalty to Talpiz coming. I'm not sure Rudy will like that one at all, and Talpiz just taking the position instead of waiting or giving it back or anything. So yeah, definitely I think something the stewards might end up looking at that one, especially since Rudy's lost 2 positions out of it. He probably would have lost the position to Talpiz anyway, especially with Talpiz's much higher amount of ERS, but he also lost the position to Ladamala, and that's going to be a lot of valuable time that he's lost. So yeah, we'll have to see what happens with stewards and if it even gets reported, but I would say the chances are that would end up being looked at by the stewards, and I know at least if I was stewarding at Tower Piz, would probably get some kind of a time penalty, a small time penalty for it. It is not exactly fair to just punt someone and then overtake them, otherwise we'd just be running into, we'd just be driving into everyone and using that to overtake them, which isn't how racing works. So yeah, unfortunate that we're robbed of a fairly interesting situation, but now it's time for Tower Piz to start chasing after Polehouse. The one thing in Tower Piz's favour here is that he's done some amazing ERS management in the early stage of this race, and ever since he came out of the pits. I don't think he's quite going to be close enough to make a move here as Daniel Goodwin pits from the lead, so that he'll be moving on to the softs for the remaining 11 laps of this race. Tower Piz closing up to Polehouse quite nicely. It'll be interesting to see if he can pull away after he makes the move. You've got to imagine that the move's inevitable at this point. Polehouse doesn't have DRS, Tower Piz will have DRS and a lot more ERS and fresher tyres, but the big question will be whether he can pull away from Polehouse effectively and catch that group of Brett and Chiquito before the end of this race in the 10 and a half laps remaining. So he's not really using his overtake mode, so he doesn't want to pass Polehouse just yet, which is quite interesting. Maybe, I don't know, I think if I was him, I'd want to get past the Ferrari as quickly as possible and try and use all of that ERS I've got to head off down the road. Maybe, I mean, he probably could catch Bread and Chiquito if he used his ERS smart. Bread's got 30% and Chiquito's got 30%, so you know, he's literally like 40-50% more ERS, so you can definitely catch a lot of ground on that alone. And then maybe if Bread and Chiquito start fighting, but we do now have an overtake. He's going to try around the outside, a bit of contact there with Polehouse, but nothing too major. He sweeps around the outside and up into a net P3 in this race as Dresser and Ali Palu both in pits. They're double stacking, in fact. So Ali Palu double stacking Dresser, and that's going to hurt him quite a lot because he's already, well, quite far down the order, and now he's going to lose more time in this stop, losing quite a bit of time. In fact, we've seen just how long it takes for the pit crew to really get into action once he pulls into the pit box. He's probably going to lose out to the Renault of Joe here. He's going to be safe from harm, who's having a very unfortunate race. Not quite as unfortunate as Mike, who's way down in last and almost half a lap behind the next car, but we'll have to see. Polehouse still able to keep inside the DRS of Tower Piz right now, so this is helping his race quite nicely, as he's going to have that toe and DRS to help defend from Ladamala. Ladamala, though, already derating, much less ERS than the Ferrari in front, but look how close he is. It will be difficult to get a move off with that less ERS, but with how close he is, I'm sure it will be possible, as long as he has a good run through Max and Beckett, which had a slightly worse run than Polehouse, about a 10th loss there, but it's nothing too massive. But even from 3.5 tenths back, look how difficult it is for him to gain any time with that lower ERS, and both cars having DRS, which will cancel each other out, of course. So just showing the effects of having ERS here and what it means to be that third man in the train. And you can see Tower Piz is catching the lead group, but not by very much, only about 1/10, 2/10 a lap, which at this time it'll be enough to get into the DRS, definitely, but it won't be enough to pass, I don't think. It'll be at least very difficult for him to make any kind of pass. You see he is now starting to use that ERS, down to 50% now, so only about 10% more than Brett and Chiquito, who have both been saving their ERS over the last couple of laps. And this could really affect the outcome of this race, because if Tower Piz does use all of his ERS catching up to that group, because he's caught a lot more so far on this lap than he did in the previous lap, and is really dropping Polehouse a lot better than he did before, but maybe not quite by enough at the moment to drop him completely out of the DRS range, which will mean that Polehouse does get some kind of defence against Ladamala for another lap. Yeah, he's still got like DRS, so he's going to catch up all the way down the straight as Tao Pierce isn't using his DRS, as he's now actually not too far off the amounts of the two leaders, and on this lap in total he's only really caught about half a tenth, if anything at all. He's actually losing out, so that lap he was slower than the two leaders, and he's used all of his ERS to get there, so it's looking less and less likely every lap that Tao Pierce is going to be able to do anything to challenge the P2 that he started with. And you've just got to think that he's lost it on strategy today. It was completely his own strategic choice which has lost him this second place in the 1-2 from McLaren. But now Bread coming under a lot of pressure from Chiquito. Chiquito going up the inside, draining a lot of his ERS to do it. He's used the DRS. Of course, Bread didn't have DRS, and Chiquito moves his way up into the lead of this race. So the Red Bull, for the first time in this race, is leading after starting P3. And yeah, wow. Didn't really expect to see Chiquito leading this race, given how this race started. You know, Chiquito was under quite high pressure from Rudy, but now we have this situation where Chiquito's leading and Rudy's in 6th, but I'm sure Bread's well aware of that penalty Chiquito has and isn't too bothered by this at all. He'd be more than happy to stay in this DRS, save his own ERS, and win because he doesn't have a penalty and Chiquito does. I'm sure maybe if he has the ERS at the end of the race, he'll go to win on track, as you know, everyone wants to win on track. It's a lot nicer to know that you've won the race through pace rather than someone else's penalties. And also, you never know, Chiquito's penalty might get removed. Maybe at some point he was forced wide off the track and that's led to him getting this penalty. So, you know, it's still completely possible that that penalty doesn't mean anything. But I'm sure he will let us know if he's going to be able to get that one removed fairly shortly after the race. We'll be able to see in the stewards' submissions whether he's asked for it to get removed or not. But we'll have to look. That's for later. This is now as Tao Pierce actually catching about half a second in the first half of the lap. You see he does that. He's catching 4/10 first half of the lap, and then we get through the second half and he's lost it all again. So maybe something going on there. But Polehouse still inside of that DRS range, and Tao Pierce is doing a great job to keep himself inside of that DRS. He has now dropped out, but I'm pretty sure he was still inside of the DRS range as they came through the detection point. So he will have DRS anyway. As you can see, he's gained about 2/10 down the straight, so that just pretty much confirms it. But I don't know how much longer he'll be able to keep in that DRS. He's already outside of a second again, and he's going to be under immense pressure from Ladamala and Rudy now, who both don't even have penalties, whereas Polehouse has that 5 seconds for speeding in the pit lane. But this is the fight that we're watching at the moment. We have Jonas and Jonah all going side by side. Jonas running off the track there and getting himself a penalty. It looked like he did that one on his own, so unfortunate there for him. But that now puts Jonas and Jonah on equal amounts of penalties. Big lunge there from Jonah, but he doesn't quite get alongside. Decides better of it. He knows there's a DRS straight coming up. He also knows that Jonas will have the DRS. He's on the just too hard on the power there, and he's had a half spin. He's trying to rejoin the track safely, but he's lost 2 positions already, and he's going to be a long way behind as he comes to the end of the straight. He's about a second, just over a second behind Scorsese now, so that's cost him huge in this race to have those cars pass him, and he's going to be regretting getting on the power so early, just wishing he was a little bit more patient in that moment maybe. Very unfortunate for him. As Tao Pierce actually is starting to now close in on the front 2 quite considerably, but as you can see he's got less ERS than them now, and Bread here still keeping very comfortably inside of that half second, 6/10 gap, and 6/10 really being the edge of where you can feel that slipstream from. So, you know, he's just building his ERS up, letting Chiquito use his a bit, knowing Chiquito has a penalty, so the pressure's all on Chiquito here at the moment, and he's just going to maybe look for the last couple of laps to make an overtake, and that'll be that really. So he's not really got much pressure on right now. Tao Piz isn't really catching fast enough to make much of a difference come the end of this race, as Jonah retires from the session in the pit lane. So he's given up, he's decided that's it for him. And there's the first retirement of this race, 22 laps into this race, and we have our first retirement, and it's a voluntary retirement. So no crashes that have caused any retirements at the moment of this race, which is a big improvement over what we had in Baku, in all honesty. From what I did see, there was quite a few retirements, and not many of them were voluntary. So yeah. As you can now, is Jonas closing in on Rally, as the yellow flags there just for Jonah's car, looking like it's going to rejoin the track. Fortunately no cars coming, so it shouldn't get in anyone's way. That is quite annoying when you pit and retire. The car comes back out the other end of the pit lane and sometimes can get in other drivers' way and stuff, so I've got to be careful of that, because it can cause issues. It can also cause issues with your teammates' pit box and stuff, which is very weird, but yeah. Actually, Mike going to have to be very careful there, because it's looking like he's going to be under pressure from getting lapped as we come to the end of this race. Another couple of tenths taken out by the lead group by Tao Piz, but again, just not looking like it will be enough to get inside. The DRS have come to the end of the race, and that's a very late break in there from Jonas. He's tagged the back of Rally, but fortunately Rally's been able to keep that one under control. It is going to lose him a bit of time to Jim in front. Rally just on the edge of 9-10, probably using his ERS to make sure that he doesn't drop outside of the DRS range as we come up to the detection point. And Jonas now looking very nice to position himself for a move, much closer to Rally than Rally is to Jim. Still Rally's inside of that DRS range, and there's a very poor exit there from Jonas, may have just cost him the chance of that overtake, because Ali Palo gets a 3-second time penalty for track limits, so he becomes the 6th man in this race to get that. Remember, Polhouse's penalties for speeding in the pit lane, and Jonas unable to make anything work that time round. But now we have Bread closing in massively on Chiquito. Is this going to be his chance to pounce? He knows that he's not under pressure from behind, and he knows that the car in front has that penalty, so he doesn't have to take too many risks. But look how close he is. 1/10 now as we come up towards Stowe. He's alongside, he's on the inside, and he's easily through on the braking. Very nice car positioning there, and that's Chiquito running wide. That would be another warning. So pretty much solidifying the fact that he won't get that penalty removed, I think. And Brett moves his way back up into the lead of this race here at the end of lap 23, the start of lap 24. So looking in a very good position with the car behind on a penalty, and his teammate 2 or so seconds back with the last 3 laps of this race. Of course, he will have Chiquito inside that DRS range, so Chiquito might be able to make something work as we come through the next couple of laps in the DRS zones, being fairly nice overtaking spots, but it's just not close enough in this one. Maybe if he's able to stay close enough through the next one and manage his ERS, he's actually still got more ERS than Bread, but I think he knows it's a bit of a lost cause trying to fight when he's got that penalty. We'll have to see if he wants to make it a spicy ending, though. We do enjoy a bit of spice here in ALR. Just watching the gap now, 3.5 tenths separating the 2 cars, definitely within striking range here should he go for the move. Very close to a corner cut there from Chiquito, maybe looking close to another warning, and maybe he's even close to another penalty. I won't check, really there's a surprise. We do like surprises as well. Just getting within that 1.5 tenths, but not able to have removed, not feeling brave enough to go up the inside there. Don't really blame him, it's a very easy corner to get turned in on if you go for all that kind of move. He's just going to wait, be patient, not do anything silly as Dresser moves himself up into 12th place ahead of Scoolsy. It's not really going to mean much. Of course, I mean, the top 10 drivers get points, but I guess for a bit of pride, he's moved his way up into P12. And it's Great Britain, not really the greatest track for Dresser, in all honesty. He qualified on the front row last season, only to get spun at turn 1 and retire early on in the race. And this week he's had to start last because he joined the session late, and he's unfortunately only made his way up into P12 so far this race. So yeah, just not really his best track, you've got to say. Maybe a bit of a dud for him, but I'm sure he'll be stronger when we go to other tracks. I know for sure there's a lot of tracks that he likes. As Daniel Goodwin makes up the position on Jonas. I think actually this is still the same fight from earlier. These guys just been swapping positions over and over, but Daniel now up into P9 with only a lap and a half to go, so he's in a very solid position, especially with the DRS on rally, so very well protected as we come through Maggots, Beckett and Chapel. It's actually looking like Daniel's struggling a bit compared to the cars around him, so those soft tyres maybe just dying. As Chiquito, it's been an issue for Chiquito as he's retired on the track. I think maybe he went for a move and got turned round, but that does actually move Tao Pierce back up into second place. Huge drama here at the end of the race. We move on to the final lap, and our biggest contester for P2 is this. It's just retired. We'll have to see later on if anything went on between Bread and Chiquito there, but hopefully it wasn't anything too serious, because that would be a big shame to see the fight for the lead of the race end in such a disappointing way, really. Well, I mean, it's disappointing no matter what. He's retired from the race, but you know, if it was a collision that was someone's fault, that would be even more disappointing, I feel, because it's not really the kind of racing you want to see up at the top of the table. You know, fastest guys in the league, you don't want to see them coming together and it being someone's fault. You know, you'd like to hope it was a racing incident, just something a bit unfortunate, but we'll have to see. As Rally may be looking for a move here in the final lap of the race, as Brett coming towards the final few corners. We'll have to look at him. Well, we won't look at him, to be honest. We'll look at this instead. This is way more interesting. As Rally now going for the outside, maybe trying around the outside of Kops here on the final lap. He's been touched, he's been forced off the road, but he is still going to get ahead. Polehouse, obviously in 5 seconds that he didn't serve, that's going to drop him down the order a bit, but Rally does move his way up into 6th place there in the final sector of the final lap. And is it elite? It's going to be interesting, because he did have to go off track to complete it, so maybe it's not a legal move, but at the same time you could probably argue that he was forced off the track. He didn't really have much to go, and in my personal opinion, if you're forced off the track and then you overtake someone off the track, it's their fault for forcing you off the track, right? So it kind of just balances itself out, and you've got to say carry on. So maybe that'll stand, maybe it won't, but he has made the move around the outside here on the final lap, and it was a great move, to be completely honest, all off track and that aside. We're just waiting now for Harm to be the last drivers across the line here in P15 and to finish the race. So maybe not as much wheel-to-wheel action as we would usually expect from Britain, but definitely, oh come on dude, but definitely a good amount of drama, good amount of strategy and general action going on today. So definitely happy with this race, definitely a good race to watch, and definitely makes you excited for the rest of the season, really, looking at how close some of these fights were. Maybe at a different track where DRS training is not so prevalent, you can get some pretty nice battles going on, you know, more one-on-ones instead of these big groups of 4 or 5 cars all just following each other around. But yeah, definitely been enjoyable to commentate on. Nonetheless, there is our winner, Bread, coming ahead of his teammate Tao Piz in second, so those two finishing the race 1-2 just like they started it. And third place kind of unexpectedly, in all honesty, looking at how things shaped up, but of course the retirement of Chiquito helped, is Ladamala. So Ladamala starting 7th and coming up to 3rd, very solid race from him. In fact, probably one of the most solid races outside of Dresser, who made up 9 positions in this race. So yeah, hats off to Ladamala. 4th place was Rudy, Polehouse 5th place. Even with that penalty, he had 8 seconds in the end, so it's good that he still made up a position overall in this race. Rally 6th place with Jim in 7th, Daniel in 8th, Dresser in 9th. He scored points after starting last, so great drive from him. Definitely my driver of the day. Sculzi in 10th. Put good points for him in the Ferrari. Jonas, Stel Repas, Joe, Alupalu, Harm, and Mike all finishing outside the points. Chiquito being classified but did not finish, and Jonah, of course, who did not finish after that earlier incident. Really just a unlucky race from him all round after getting spun on lap 1 and just being in the walls from there on. Oh, definitely need to drink after all that talking. Just check in to see if tier 2 and 3 are still going, because if they are, I would recommend you go over there. Tier 2 has finished. No other live streams for any tiers at the moment, so yeah. So yeah, pretty crazy race. I think that's it. So no other streams to send you all to. Fair enough. Right. Thank you all for coming along. That was a pretty good race to commentate as well. First of the season. Again, apologies for not being here last week. Yeah, drama all around. Got to say well done to the podium finishers, of course. They all drove very well, especially Ladamala. Very strong performance from him. Yeah, I know he only made up 4 positions, but you know, that's 4 more than some other people. Yeah, overall really happy with that race. Thank you all for coming along. It's been a pleasure to commentate for you all again, and looking forward to another great season with you all after 2 great ones before. The next race, of course, will be same time next week, so that's Thursday at 8 PM UK time, and we will be, if I check the calendar, we'll be in Bahrain. Short. Oh, for God's sake, every league does this track. Just do normal Bahrain. You can probably work out my opinions on that one. I do prefer. I don't not like. I like Bahrain short. Normal Bahrain's better. But everyone's doing Bahrain short at the moment, pretty much just because of PSGL did it, and then that one TRL Limitless video where he said it's actually not that bad to race on. So yeah. Thank you for coming. It's been a great race to commentate. Of course, make sure you check out the other races, which will be Sunday 8 PM, which will be tiers 3, 5 and 6, I think. If there's even a tier 6, I don't think there is, if I'm being honest. I might just be making that up. And of course Tuesday at 8 PM, which is the Sprint League, which I might occasionally participate in. I'm a reserve, but it's not looking like the guys, because it's basically this season it's realistic car performance and they're split into tiers. So you know, the worst 2 cars go to the fastest tier of drivers, and the fastest 2 cars go to the slowest tier of drivers. And I've been placed in the top tier of drivers as a reserve, and it's actually a pretty solid lineup that doesn't look like it will be needing reserves very often. So at some point this season I might race in the Sprint League. I wouldn't bet on it, but of course make sure you check it out anyway. It's very interesting format of racing. Definitely even more interesting this season with the whole realistic car performance. So yeah, definitely worth your watch if you ask me. We already had Britain and Canada this week, and next week will be Baku and Italy. So definitely exciting racing to be found there in the 25% sprint races. But yeah, that's it from me. So again, hope you all enjoyed that race. Thank you all for coming, and have a nice evening. Goodbye.